Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Um, just a follow up, I guess, from one of the comments that Councillor Devine was making about the standards that we currently have set. I would just be curious if you had any background that gets us to why the city's standard is so high. Certainly, it's good to have high standards, but when there's an industry standard across the board that's lower than where we're at, that does get into resource questions, that does get into standardization questions, and so I'm just curious why we're shooting for such a high target. Not that we wouldn't want to.
I'll take this one. So thank you much for the question, Mr. Chair. I have the privilege and the curse of having been with the Ottawa Police for a significant amount of time and have seen the history of this agreement. I can tell you that there is no answer to that question. It was determined in the late 1980s, and at that time it was actually 98% of 97%. And it was changed, and there was no logic behind it because I actually saw it to 97. So there was no matrix, there was no metrics, there was no data that was used to come up with that change, nor is there reasoning for this initial level of service. The reason why it was determined is completely lost to history at this point. There is no records as to how and why it was determined in that way.
Okay, I appreciate the frankness of that. Maybe it's premature to ask the question then because I know you're doing your review, but in that process, do you think that realigning the standard with other municipalities or a broad industry standard is a goal that would be good for the purposes of kind of strategic alignment, or are we simply satisfied that we've done it this way for a long time and it fits the Ottawa need?
I can speak a bit to that, and thank you much for the question, Mr. Chair. Right now, I can tell you that public safety and Ottawa Police have been aligned in making the right decisions for the right reasons. The issue that we often come up or face is the fact that we're very much an outlier. It's hard to compare ourselves to other agencies and see how truly good we are doing. If you look at other cities that have a very much lower service level agreement that do not meet their goal, and then if you discuss that Ottawa is not doing it either, if you don't really look at the data, you would assume that we're both at the same level, while in fact, the city of Ottawa's criteria is significantly higher. So I think ultimately we always try to align with the industry because there's a reason why there are standards. And ultimately lowering the standard doesn't mean that we're sacrificing public safety. The goal is always to answer every call as quick as we can. The service level objectives are essentially that objectives that we try to meet, but we don't work less because the objectives are lower. It's just a different way to measuring standards or performance.
That makes sense, and I appreciate that because if we can't answer the question of why the standard is what it is, then we probably need to look more broadly at other comparables and to the industry standard to do that. So I appreciate that, and I would just like to highlight for my colleagues, Mike Wood from my ward. He did put forth a written delegation. He had wanted to join today because he's been a tireless advocate on issues of 911 and the coordination across many cities. And I just wanted to highlight my appreciation for the work that he did on that and the content of that letter, which I would encourage all of you to take a look at. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.